laid to rest for less than 2 hours when my mother-in-law leaned close and whispered, "The house belongs to my family now." I was still holding the neatly folded American flag that had just been placed into my hands. Gentle breeze swept through Arlington National Cemetery, rustling the trees and passing over endless rows of white headstones. Soldiers in crisp blue uniforms stood perfectly still as the ceremony came to its solemn end. My husband, Colonel Daniel Mercer, had received full military honors, a farewell that reflected the life he had dedicated to serving others. When the young service member presented me with a folded flag, he quietly said on behalf of a grateful nation. I could only nod. Don Daniel would have hated being the center of attention like this. He was the kind of man who polished his coffee mug before bed, still shined his boots even after retirement, and believed a person's true character was revealed by how they treated waiters, janitors, and strangers who could do nothing for them. So when Vivian Mercer approached me beside the funeral vehicle, dressed in an elegant black coat with pearls glimmering at her collar, I wasn't expecting what came next. She barely glanced at the flag in my hands. "We have to be practical," she said softly. At first I assumed she was talking about funeral expenses, relatives, or all the responsibilities that follow a loss. Then she leaned closer and whispered, "The house belongs to my family now. And the company does too." I noticed a loose thread hanging from the sleeve of her coat. Behind her, Daniel's longtime friend was quietly speaking with someone from the church while my sister carefully loaded white lilies into the back of a car. No one else had heard what Vivian had just said. I could have argued. I could have shouted Dot instead. I tightened my grip around the folded flag and calmly replied, "Not today!" She smiled as though she had already won. That evening, the house felt painfully empty. Daniel's reading glasses still rested beside his favorite chair. His unfinished crossword puzzle lay on the kitchen table next to a half-finished cup of cold coffee that I couldn't bring myself to throw away. At exactly 7 o'clock. My attorney, Grant Ellis, arrived carrying a thick folder. "Vivian has already contacted a probate attorney," he said as he sat down. I let out a tired laugh. Of course she has." Grant opened the folder. "You can challenge anything she files. It won't be easy, but you are far from powerless." I looked toward Daniel's chair before quietly saying, "Let her think she's winning." Grant stared at me for a long moment. "You're willing to walk away from everything?" I slowly nodded. I want her to believe she already has it all. Without another word, Grant closed the folder. After he left, I walked into Daniel's closet, wrapped my arms around one of his old field jackets, buried my face in the fabric, and cried harder than I had since the funeral. The ache of losing him. It wasn't just emotional, it felt physical. But a week later, while organizing Daniel's workshop, I found a sealed envelope tucked inside a green binder. My name was written across the front in his unmistakable handwriting. My first instinct was to open it immediately, but something told me to wait. The following morning, I called Grant instead. By then, rumors had already spread throughout Fairfax. Vivian had been telling everyone that I had accepted defeat gracefully. Even strangers at the grocery store looked at me with sympathy, believing I had already lost everything. Later that afternoon, Grant drove me to Mercer Precision. The company Daniel and I had spent years building together. Our business specialized in repairing hydraulic systems for fire departments, rescue units, and utility crews throughout the region. The familiar scent of machine oil and fresh coffee filled the building, bringing back countless memories. Employees who had worked with us for decades stopped what they were doing and looked me with worried expressions. One of them finally asked, "Are our jobs safe?" I answered honestly, "I don't know yet." That evening, I finally opened Daniel's letter. Inside, he wrote that I was looking in the wrong place. The green binder wasn't the one that mattered. He instructed me to retrieve the blue estate binder. Instead, he explained that he had prepared for every possible situation because, as he always believed, a good officer never leaves the people under his care unprotected. Hidden beneath years of tax records and trust paperwork inside, the blue binder was the truth. Years earlier, Daniel had quietly transferred both our home and Mercer Precision into the Mercer Legacy Trust. He had appointed 3 trustees, Kalan Midad, our operations manager, Ellie, and a veterans charitable foundation. Vivian's name appeared nowhere in the trust documents. The court hearing took place on a cold Tuesday morning. Vivian arrived, wearing an expensive cream-colored silk suit, carrying herself with complete confidence. Her attorney argued passionately about bloodlines, inheritance, and family rights. Then Grant stewed. He asked the judge to review and verify the trust documents within minutes. The atmosphere inside the courtroom completely changed. The assets Vivian believed she was fighting over were never part of Daniel's probate estate in the first place. The trust legally required Mercer Precision to remain in Virginia, continue hiring military veterans, and protect the majority of its employees. Vivian's expression changed instantly. It looked as though the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Then the judge read aloud a personal letter Daniel had written specifically. For his mother, he had left her a modest cash gift. Nothing more. In the letter, he gently explained that love and ownership were not the same thing, and that caring for someone never entitled anyone to control what they had built. When the hearing ended, Vivian's claim was officially dismissed. Outside the courthouse, many of our employees had gathered on the steps, waiting anxiously for news. When I told Ellie that Daniel had personally named her as one of the trustees, she looked stunned. "He really trusted me that much?" she asked. I smiled. He trusted the people who stayed beside him when it mattered. Life slowly moved forward. The company continued growing. Our apprenticeship program expanded, giving more veterans opportunities to build new careers after military service. Months later, during the spring, Vivian mailed me a brief letter apologizing for everything that had happened. I never responded. Instead, I quietly placed her letter inside Daniel's binder and closed it on Memorial Day. I returned to Arlington carrying a single bouquet of white roses standing beside Daniel's grave while the leaves drifted gently across the grass. I finally understood what he had done. Softly, I whispered, I understand now. Even after you were gone, you were still protecting your people. For the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. Because Daniel's greatest legacy had never been the house, the company, or even the trust he created. His true legacy was the people whose lives he had secured before he said goodbye.